Welcome into Wingin' It Wednesday. Rob Kirkpatrick and Bernadette Lee with our panelists. Carol Ross, good morning.
Good morning.
Warren Cottle.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Stafford Barnett.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, too. You know, we learned a little bit about Stafford in the last hour. We had a few spare minutes at the end, and we decided we never did a bio segment. Who are you? Where did you come from? What do you know? What do you do? Anyway, we learned that he's colorblind, so... Bernie, you might keep your red, yellow, green cards to yourself.
That's
now
right.
that we know.
Are they
color-coded? No, they're not.
We wouldn't do that.
Joke's on me.
Let's start with this weekend's election. The treasurer race is one that's going to be decided, but it also falls on the same day that New Orleans goes to the polls for their new mayor. So, Elsa, there's a lot of things going on here. A couple of different fundraisers. Festival, Zacadians at Creole is going on at Gerard Park. What's going to happen with this one? Carol, let's start with you, then we'll move on down the line.
Well, folks in Acadiana better get motivated and get out and vote. Otherwise, New Orleans will once again wag the dog. And so, that's going to be a heavy race over there. They have a lot of candidates over there in New Orleans, and it's going to be hotly contested. The ironic thing in terms of the treasurer's race is that the state Democratic Party is supporting Neil Reiser. They've sent out flyers that he's the most progressive candidate. Well, you say the word progressive to a bunch of conservatives. That doesn't sit too well. And so, and the other thing is John Alario is backing him heavily. So that has a lot of people very concerned. But the Democrat from New Orleans doesn't look like he's gaining too much traction. And yet in the polls, he seems to be leading. So, yeah, I know, because everybody else is a Republican. I think there are 6 other candidates, and they're all Republicans. We've interviewed most of them on the show in the afternoon, and we'll have Mr. Little, I think, Thursday afternoon. So this is anybody's guess. If the turnout stays low in the other parts of the state, New Orleans really will control the outcome of the treasurer's race.
Warren?
You know, the turnout, I don't know if the turnout really has much to do with it at all. As far as who votes is what the big deal. Of course, what you're saying is that if New Orleans turns out in big numbers, then they're going to tip the balance of what the rest of the state does. But, however, I don't really know. The only thing I know is that I'm one of those that's anybody but Reiser/Jindal, and I say that because he was Bobby Jindal's boy, and they crafted that congressional race over here that McAllister won. The way they did the thing for the congressman to resign and then have to speed up the election or whatever it was that they did, but the whole Bobby Jindal group threw all of their support behind Neil Reiser, and he was the anointed one. Nobody else was even allowed to run in the thing. But as it turned out that I think because of all of that support and the way they tried to draft that thing is that he wound up getting soundly defeated. And I think that may be kind of the somewhat same thing. Of course, they also ran an extremely negative campaign. And I thought then, I said, I hope this is the beginning of the end where that these people, the negative campaigns backfire on them. And I think that's really kind of what happened. But as Carol said, you look at who's backing him. And who's backing Neil Reiser is that force that everybody in the state of Louisiana seems to be opposed to. The majority of Louisianans seem to be opposed to.
Stafford, who's going to be the next treasurer here in our state?
Honestly, I have no idea. This treasurer race and the PSC race have both just been kind of like oddballs for me because there really is so little that these guys do. You know, PSC is responsible for managing monopolies for the most part in Louisiana. And the treasurer really just manages the money for the most part. So I've seen I think the worst part about this election has been the campaign commercials. Like I saw one that showed, like everybody in Baton Rouge, like stuffing their jackets full of money. And there was like comments in the background, like, yeah, just take whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with it. And it perpetuates this idea that like budgets don't exist and like we don't have dedicated funds and we don't have constitutional amendments to protect things. And the end of it is, vote for me. I'll make sure that the greedy fat cats in Baton Rouge stop taking your money. And it's just so disingenuous and plays to people who believe the fear that gets perpetuated in our community about government, right? That government's evil and it's bad and it steals money and it robs and they line their pockets. when in reality we have laws and consequences and checks and balances. And so, honestly, I don't know who's going to win. I don't care. And I say that, but then you realize that John Kennedy used that as a stepping stone and has kind of made a fool out of Louisiana since he's gotten up to D.C. So it is an important race, but again, I've just got no dog in the fight.
I hate to use the F word in Acadiana, but flooding, again, on everyone's minds. Of course, as we had a moderate rain, and much of downtown Lafayette had some flooding. Someone called in the Carol show yesterday and said they were driving on just regular roads, not even on an underpass, and totaled a car in the water. We kind of look at what LCG has to do and where it is on the priority list. That's when we come back on Wingin' It Wednesday. News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Next. All right, flooding in Acadiana. Ugh. I'm talking about that. Luckily, not the widespread residential flooding that we have seen, not even as widespread a flooding, but does it seem to anyone else that it just happens quicker now? Like, the water just it has nowhere to go, and maybe we're just a little bit more in tune to it and still a little bit gun-shy, for what happened back in 2016. But a lot of the streets downtown were flooded, even some in the oil center with some standing water as well. So we're going to talk about drainage here in our community. Where should it be on LCG's priority list? Warren, we're going to start with you this time.
Well, I watched a little clip of Mayor President Robideau talking about the millage and how that some things need to be moved around and changed around and whatever, and because you have dedicated funds and whatever. And I think that's where your biggest problem is. And that's the problem in Louisiana, how we dedicate funds for this, we dedicate funds for that. Everybody knows that in estate planning and wills and all that, the worst thing you can do is to lock in the money. And so then when you turn around there and somebody dies and they got a trust fund set up for the kids and all that, but it can only be used for X, Y, Z, and then one of the kids comes down with some kind of dreaded illness and you can't get to the money and all that, those are the worst things in the world. And that's what we've done here with all these dedicated funds, and this millage goes strictly for this and strictly for that. And I keep saying over and over and over, I use Carol's line, it's not a tax problem, it's a spending problem. And it's where we allocate the money to. And that you say, well, we get drainage over here, we got drainage problems here, we got drainage problems there. I don't think it's been intensified here lately. I think it's always been there. I remember when I first came to Lafayette, it was in 1987, and Ambassador Caffrey would completely flood out there sometimes that would just become impassable. They did work on parts of it, but it was an engineering problem. I mean, you could sit there and look, the way the road was sloped and all of that, it was kind of a levee within a flood zone that created more of a problem, and that's all over town. And I still say that your flooding problem is not where it floods, it's somewhere downline from there, and where the water backs up. And some reason or another, we cannot get beyond that point. And I'm going to go back and say it one more time, is that if you look at it, the FEMA map that was never approved in Lafayette Parish is spot on right. So when are we going to address that issue? And that's what we need to be doing now.
Stafford, there's been a big push to drive people downtown, to encourage business downtown. There are a few new kind of poppin' businesses that are happening downtown. Dat Dog, what is the other one? Rockin' Bull is coming.
Yeah, that dog's awesome, by the way.
This flooding thing, do they need to get this under control? What are your kind of thoughts about this?
So, I don't know if anybody else in here flooded, but I flooded back in August, and I live in a 500-year flood zone. I got 1 inch of water in my home, and I was out of my house for 7 months. I had a little over $200,000 worth of damage for 1 inch of water in my home. And I live 23 and a half feet above sea level. I think the river crested at 19 and a half feet. And so we had problems with the water just kind of getting to where it had to go. I mean, I think we estimated 32 inches of rain in something like 30 hours. I mean, it was, with two of those segments, I think we got 10 inches in 2 hours twice, right? So we had some serious volume. And there's some people that say that there's more rain because of global warming. They say that there's a lot of things that people are saying about this, and I don't know what the answer is. I just know that during our last election, the voters of Lafayette came out, and they said that they're not interested in paying taxes, right? And we have people who professionally spend time trying to convince the people of Lafayette that we're the highest tax, blah, 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 around, which is a blatant lie. And we finally found a way to fund drainage, right, without raising taxes. So the city went and renegotiated their contract with the mosquito company. They were able to lower their costs, and the mosquito fund's flush with money, right? So what Robideau is proposing is taking some money out of the account that they're flush with, putting it back into drainage, right? It would be a $12 million shot in the arm. The problem we have is that we have guys who are professionally lying about this on the internet, right? Michael Lunsford runs a page called Lafayette Citizens Against Taxes. Well, interestingly enough, Michael Lunsford is not a Lafayette citizen. He's an elected position in St. Martinville. And you got to sit there and wonder, why is an elected representative in St. Martinville spreading disinformation about Lafayette? I
would be careful about attacking anyone personally.
Okay. Well,
be very careful
wait
about that.
Wait your turn.
I appreciate
and
that.
I shall.
This time. He got 2 minutes. Now he's at 2
I haven't seen a card yet.
Oh, I had all the cards.
All right, wrap up.
I'm just telling you.
They're going out and saying that there's $10 million in the fund for drainage, right? When that is an accounting procedure for Public Works to show money during the session, right? All this information is publicly available, but we have people that go out and spread disinformation about this. And I can tell you, as somebody whose home is flooded, it's pretty infuriating to hear people say, we don't want to spend money on drainage when our taxes are low as it is.
Carol, your thoughts?
That is not what people are saying. What they are saying is, if it were truly a priority, and that's what the question is it truly a priority? We have dedicated drainage funds over the years that have nearly doubled. I've gotten the exact charts from the tax assessor. You cannot argue with the numbers. The money has been diverted from drainage over the years. There's still money in that fund for drainage. Why hasn't it been spent already? Why are they coming to us with a millage rededication that doesn't put enough toward drainage? Not really, and will not solve the problem, but they slip in something for arts and culture, etc., into a thing that it's not even germane to this rededication. If you want to look at the millages that are piling up, you look all across the board. You look at the library. You look at all of the other millages that are piling up and have reserves, and then you go after the problem with real, plans in place. By the way, FEMA has looked at this, and they are spearheading a regional drainage project dealing with the Vermilion watershed. It's multi-parish initiative because FEMA is sick and tired of paying out money. We have a drainage problem. Our priorities at LCG are not quite there yet, obviously. But this millage rededication will not solve the problem, does not put enough money toward drainage. And if it were really about drainage, they wouldn't have slipped other things into it. And by the way, they're crying about those 2 millages, the one for the courthouse and the jail, not being passed. If they were serious about getting those passed, and I agree, those 2 millages need to be passed. They are dedicated funds. They are things that we are legally required to fund. And they should not have muddied the water by putting this rededication, which is another government bait and switch. They've done this rededication 2 years ago and told us that it was going to be for this, that, and the other. And now they're coming back and asking for money for something else. And let me say one thing. Staying ahead of major flooding events has been a priority in Broussard, according to an article that posted online by KATC. Broussard's population comes in at about 11,500. Following last year's historic flood, not even 600 homes, even 600 homes needed the money. And why? Because they have made flooding a priority.
Okay, wrap it up there. Warren, and you can wrap up this topic. We'll get to you for a quick word too, Stafford.
Yeah, you're talking about the mosquito fund and all that and how they're going to use some of that for drainage, Well, let's go back and talk about whenever they took the $4.5 million out of the mosquito fund to settle part of a lawsuit, which that lawsuit finally got completely thrown out of court for no merit, and you talk about theft in government and such stuff as that. But, go back to where you live and your flooding problem. I feel sorry if anybody has a flooding problem. You said you live in a 500-year flood zone.
Right.
All right. So what caused the flooding 500 years ago?
That's not how that works.
I know it's not how it works. I live in a place down there that we had a 100-year flood. Right after that, we had a 500-year flood. Right. And then for the next time, we think we may have a 1,000-year flood. But
we will move on to another topic here. 2 more to get to here in this hour. It's 7:29. This is Wingin' Wednesday, brought to you by Service Chevrolet Cadillac. At 1212 Ambassador Caffrey and 1214 Ambassador Caffrey.
I just want to go on the record that you're opposed to people whose homes getting flooded, fixing the problem with the money with no new taxes.
Well, your record is wrong because I am definitely not opposed to that.
Okay.
That is more sophistry right there. Right there. That is not true. And you cannot attribute that to me. And you should not be attacking Michael Lunsford, who goes by the numbers.
His numbers
by the
are
numbers
wrong.
that he gets from LCG's website.
We'll wrap it up
Well, that's
here.
what your opinion is, but the numbers are there.
KPEL News Time is 7:29. Stay with us on Acadiana's Morning. Wingin' Wednesday brought to you each and every week by Service Cadillac, one of the largest Cadillac inventories here in the state, by far the largest in our area. At Service Cadillac, you can find that luxury pre-owned vehicle, certified pre-owned like I have, to fit your style and budget, or get a Cadillac CPO with the same warranty as a new Cadillac for 6 years or 70,000 miles. 70,000 miles?
What? Yeah.
If I make a car go to 70,000 miles, someone come and check my pulse, because I don't like going that far on it. 1212 Ambassador Caffrey and 1214 Ambassador Caffrey here in Lafayette. And it also is Washer Up Wednesday over there at the Wash.
Yes, it
on
is,
the lot
sir.
at Service Chevrolet Cadillac.
And they do a great job.
1212 Ambassador Caffrey and 1214 Ambassador Caffrey. We're back to continue with our topics, and we're going to move on to Trump approval rating numbers. It's a story at KPEL965.com. A slight drop in Louisiana. The question is, do the reported feuds between President Trump and Senator Corker, even some John McCain and Tillerson this week, play into public perception of the president? Stafford, this go round, you're going first. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it does. And look, everybody, and I said it too, when he won the election, I said, I hope that I was wrong about him. I hope that he turns around and becomes presidential. And he just has proven that he hasn't been able to do that. And I'm happy that he's surrounded right now with guys like General John Kelly, who I think is a great man, Rex Tillerson, who I think is a phenomenal human being. And ironically, it seems like Steve Mnuchin seems like a decent guy too. And apparently those guys have a pact that if any one of them gets fired, it's Mattis, Tillerson, and Mnuchin, right? That if any one of them is forced to resign, that they all walk away.
Another fake news.
Wait your turn, Carol. Come on, Carol.
Anything, I'm just musing to myself. I'm laughing.
And so, we're seeing this kind of fall apart. And Corker supported Trump, and he's called him out. He said, "Look, it is babysitting up there." And one of the funniest things I've heard about this was somebody suggested a drive to send diapers up to the White House as a joke, and I don't think it's going to happen, but. You got to realize this guy went on the campaign trail and lied to get elected. He said that we're going to bring down the cost of health care. We're going to get more people covered by health care. We're going to do this, that, and the other. He hasn't done it. He hasn't been able to repeal Obamacare. He hasn't been able to build a wall. There's so many things he just said to get people fired up that just weren't realistic, and never were going to be realistic. And people bought into it hook, line, and sinker. They bought into the xenophobia. And I feel for, there's a lot of people who are heartbroken by this right now. And look, the options for president this year or last year were terrible, right? And I get that, but what did you expect? Did you expect people to be happy with we have a reality star for president, and he acts like a reality star.
All right, Carol. When my swivel chair turns over to you, it's your turn.
Oh,
Go ahead.
It's my turn. Thank you so much. Well, I don't think it means anything because the base absolutely agrees with what Trump is doing. He's doing as much as he can through his presidential powers with executive orders that he's overturning that Obama illegally put in there. And so his approval rating down in Louisiana, 2 points? Yeah, I don't think that means too much. I would rather not see some of these feuds. Corker sits on some key committees, and he's going to need his vote. But I think there are deep problems on both sides, and I don't think that the optics have much to do with what Trump is going to do. He's sort of an outlier in every possible way, and I think that's exactly why people elected him. They're tired of the business as usual, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, going behind closed doors, making the deals. And they really, I think people are kind of enjoying that he's exposing the underbelly of all this. I don't think there's in his base, I don't think there's too much consternation. And if he keeps the rest of them off balance, that's just fine with me, because I think they all could stand having a little off balance and their little playground up there in D.C. being disrupted. So I don't think there's a problem here. Public perception, that may hurt him eventually. down the road waits to be seen. In the 2018 elections, I think we'll have more of an indication whether it hurts Trump or whether it hurts the Republicans in Congress who are fighting Trump.
Turning to Warren, part of the article that we have, a quote from Dr. Joshua Stockley that said there's an actual slight decline that could be attributed to the occasional or small number of moderates who go back and forth depending on the poll. We're going to get to the phones here in a second, but Warren, I'm interested kind of in your thoughts about this.
I go back to what Ronald Reagan said, don't tell me anything about the polls. We have a job to do. I'm not looking at polls, not interested in polls, but I would say this. He does have the third highest rated polls of any governor of any state. I think there's two others, Wyoming and West Virginia, that top that. Donald Trump's not acting presidential, Stafford says. That's what the people have said all the way along here whenever he got elected. Well, by God, I'm glad he's not. If you go back, the one person who was the media was totally opposed to because he did not act presidential. He had a foul mouth on him. He would curse at people and on and on. And that was Harry S. Truman, who finally went down in history as being probably one of the greatest presidents that we have had. And that, that sometimes there needs to be somebody in there who's going to just not just kowtow to the standard old line. As far as anything, the deal about Corker is the worst thing that's come out of Tennessee since Jim Sasser. And he may even eclipse Jim Sasser. And if you look at his poll numbers in Tennessee, tell me how good he's doing up there among the people who elected him. And which is the reason why he is not running for re-election.
Stafford, wrap this one up, then we're going to go to the phone lines.
It's in writing that Trump endorsed Corker recently, and he lied about not endorsing him. And this is the typical move of Republicans. That you'll love him as long as he loves you, but as soon as he turns on you, you sit there and say, the guy never did anything. Listen to the John McCain thing, right? They've called him a coward. They've called him everything under the sun, right? And I'm sure we'll hear it again today. But they turn on him as they eat their young, right?
Let's talk. Let's go to the phones. 232-1542.
You do paint with broad brushes, Stafford. Very broad brushes.
Let's let the callers weigh in. Go ahead with your first name and your comment.
This is Stacy, and Stafford, I would just like to say I am a working female. I am a teacher. My husband was in the oil field, and we just both finally got employed, and Trump is the only person who has fought for us from the beginning. I wasn't a Trump supporter, but I will support him again and again and again. So I'd appreciate it if you would stop bashing our president, get your facts straight, stop calling people names, because he's fighting for me and my family. I can't even afford health care because of your beloved Obama. At least Trump is trying to do something for the working people.
All right,
I'm glad that you guys are back to work. I know what it's like to go without.
So we're going to go, if you want to respond to that caller, and then we can see.
Be clear about that you did not vote for Obama.
No, yeah, I never voted for Obama.
I just want to make sure, I don't know if that point was heard.
And spiraling healthcare costs aren't, they're from a couple of reasons, right? And again, I encourage people, macroeconomics is something that's available online. You can see it through YouTube. You can go to SLCC. You can take a class. The president nor the governor have very little power to affect the price of oil. They have the ability to affect jobs by working with the bigger picture stuff of how we value the dollar, quantitative easing, that type of stuff. But they can't change the price of oil. And this is macroeconomics. And look, I work in the company that we sell primarily to oil and gas, upstream, midstream, downstream. So I get it. I deal with it every day. I'm sorry that you were out of work. I'm glad you're back to work.
Carol, we got a quick 1 minute.
Thank you for that tutorial.
Quick minute here. You talk about the big picture things. It kind of came up too. I want to give you guys kind of a chance to respond to those. The wall, the healthcare solution, the tax solution. Is that kind of stuff going to actually happen in the first term?
Well, I certainly hope so. He certainly ran on that, but as we see, and as I've said, he is not only fighting the Democrats in the swamp, he's fighting some of his own party members, the insiders, who like it just the way it is. The water's nice and warm in the swamp, and they don't want anything to change. So Trump is an outlier. He's a disruptor, and that's exactly why we elected him. We didn't expect him to be perfect. We expected him to disrupt things as they are in Washington, because they're not working for the average person.
Warren, I'll let you respond to the same question, and then we'll take a break and move on.
Yeah, that he's not a dictator. We all know that. And that, he can't do anything unless it gets passed through Congress. And so look who's been the stumbling blocks in Congress and in the Senate. I think this 2018 election, I do believe, is going to be a watershed election. If this one in 2016 didn't wake up people, 2018, I do believe it really, really will.
Do you think some of these Republican incumbents don't come back?
I hope not. I hope there's a lot of them that don't. I mean, there's some that are just not going to run again. Corker's one of them.
Yeah.
And
well, the danger is more on the Democrat side. They have a lot more at stake.
Yeah.
They have a lot more.
So maybe we can replace a good number of them.
All right.
Yep.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. The last segment, which I almost hesitated to put in because we've said pretty much all there is to say about it, but I am interested in the timing aspect, the Harvey Weinstein situation, and really reporting on how long it took someone to respond. Is it important? It doesn't even matter. We didn't even have this before there was social media. How would you respond?
The SNL thing. That was...
The SNL thing as well. And the New York Times. We now know the New York Times didn't cover it. All right, 7:43. We're back to discuss that and take more of your calls on Wingin' It Wednesday. Stay with us.
Can I quote
You know, the only one I ever worried about hotel-wise was the casino that I stayed at that shall remain nameless with the jacuzzi in the corner of the room, because all I could feel like I smelled was Clorox all night long. My big problem with that. Anyway, welcome back to Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by Service Cadillac, 1212 Ambassador Caffrey. And 1214 Ambassador Caffrey. By the way, go and see those people at the wash. It's kind of like, I think I described it last week as the bar, where you go and they know your drink order when you get there. They know I'm going to stage a protest if the soap is on my windshield and I can't see you waving me forward. Right. I'm just going to sit there. So I'm told now they wash the soap off before you pull in. So,
there you go.
Rob Kirkpatrick, affecting real change in the world. So Harvey Weinstein was fired after accusations of sexual harassment, but the story intensified yesterday when the New Yorker posted an account of a woman who said she was actually assaulted. Well, now there are 3 other women who've come forward to say they were assaulted. And it seems to me, though, the story's kind of been derailed. If you watch any coverage of this, a lot of it has been focused on how long it has taken for people to respond, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, or an official release. Does this even matter? Carol, you were back in the number 1 spot for this last segment. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I'm shocked that there's this sort of conduct that goes on in Hollywood. Who would have thought these moral arbiters, the ones who tell us that we should act more morally, the ones that tell us we should stop being violent, we should give up our guns. Of course, in every movie that's a big success, they have car crashes, guns, massive death, etc. But these are the people who come out and tell us how to behave. Are we surprised about this? No, I mean, the casting couch has been a term in Hollywood for decades. Anybody remember Fatty Arbuckle? Well, I don't either, but there was a big scandal way back then. There was a big scandal way back then about him and underage girls and all that. This has been going on for decades. The question is, all of these women who are coming out now seem to be established in their careers. When they were coming up, they were willing to play footsie with this guy in order to advance their careers. Warren has a wonderful story that he probably can't share on the air about Marilyn Monroe and something she said.
He can't
say it on the air. I wish he could. It's absolutely true. So anyway, this has been going on forever. And yes, the hypocrisy in terms of we inject politics into everything. I mean, this guy was a pig. And then they covered for him. They covered for him all of these years. And mostly he was a Democrat pig because he contributed. He was very tight with the Democratic poobahs, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, all of those guys. And when Hillary comes out with a straight face and really condemns this guy, I say, oh my goodness, how can she do it?
Warren.
She was married to one, just like him.
Yeah, the big thing is, and they criticize Trump for what he said, but they don't criticize people for what they did, and that, this deal with Harvey Weinstein is absolutely horrible. That where are the feminists in all of this stuff? Where have they been over the years? Why haven't they just railed against this left and right? But going back to the casting couch and all that, I remember watching a thing on one of those mid-afternoon talk shows like Oprah or Waldo or something, and they were talking about the casting couch, and they had a lot of women on there talking about what they had to go through and such stuff as that. And Rollo asked him he asked him at the end of it, he said, is it better today than it was? And this was back in the 80s when I watched this thing. And they said, oh, God, yes. Oh, yeah, it just really is not even there today much. Said the ones who are really getting hit on today are the men. Because said most of the producers now are gay males. And said, so when the men go in there, especially in New York, said when the men go in there, they can expect the casting couch deal. So
you actually had Terry Crews yesterday, the actor who came out, been in several different movies, who's a guy who said, look, it's not just not just
Yeah.
female thing.
Yeah.
That's what's sad about
happened to
it.
me too.
But look, here's the other thing too, is that I see where some of them, like the Joker from Minnesota and Elizabeth Warren and Schumer and some of them saying they're going to give that money to charity. I'd like to see what charities they give the money to. And also, are they going to give back the money, just the money that Weinstein signed the check, or are they going to give back the money that came from the fundraiser that he put on for them?
Interesting. Wrap this one up for us, Stefan.
Harvey Weinstein's a rapist, and he's a sexual predator. And he was in a position of power, and he took advantage of it. And he deserves to go to jail. He deserves to lose all his money. He deserves to lose his business. I hope that he gets hurt while he's in jail. I hope he dies a lonely, painful death. I'm disappointed that people are politicizing this, because I think that it plays into this idea that everything needs to be bipartisan BS. At the end of the day, he's a rapist, and he's a terrible person, and he deserves to lose everything. I don't care about his political leanings. I don't care about where the feminists. I don't care about SNL. I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is I hope he gets prosecuted. I hope he goes to jail, and I hope he gets hurt while he's in there.